talk about. Hi. So for my outline, I wanted to talk about the varied approaches or roles in family life education. It was in our reading this week, and so to begin with, it talked about the expert approach, which I kind of think of as the blank slate that John Locke sort of said that all children are born with. That um, children are a blank slate, and that it's the parents' job to sort of write on that blank slate, and they can turn them into whatever they want. And so in this expert approach, that's sort of the idea I get from it, that the subject matter authorities transmit the fixed body of knowledge to the learner. And in this approach, the educator is the only one that possesses knowledge. It's highly structured teaching material with predetermined curricula and agenda, and it focuses on content mastery. So when I was thinking about this approach, I also related back to my family and community relations course, where we learned about authoritarian leadership styles. And basically in this, it's almost exactly the same as this expert approach, where teachers in this leadership style will kind of talk down to their students as they are the expert and the student knows nothing. And I feel like this is kind of the most ineffective way to teach. The teachers I had that were authoritarian in their leadership style, they were those that lectured from boring PowerPoints, and they never engaged the class, almost as if they could have gone on talking regardless of if anyone had been there to hear them. And they might have called on someone who raised their hand to ask a question, but aside from that, they hardly acknowledged the class and continued with their noticeably recited and reused lecture that they had done many times. So something else about the expert approach, the learner is viewed as uninformed. Their experiential knowledge of subject material is of less importance than the expert's specialized knowledge. And the lecture style, it's in a lecture style format. And like I said before, static exchange of knowledge with little discussion. So again, the expert might call on a participant, but is not likely to engage them in a discussion. The second approach is the facilitator approach. In this one, there's really no specific agenda. Participants set the agenda based on what is important to them, and the facilitator shares information as a co-equal partner or a co-learner of this experience. So the facilitator acknowledges that participants are already fairly well informed on the subject. The facilitator doesn't dominate or lead the conversation, but they will contribute. They'll share information as it fits with the flow of the group. The facilitator will also help participants access the knowledge that they already have within them. So I think this is kind of like, they're helping them make connections to the things that they already know. This approach fits the humanist education philosophy, where they believe that personal development they believe in personal development towards one's own full potential. So, the learner knows best what their learning needs are. They use collaboration, experimentation, and discovery to learn. And they take learners' background experiences into account. I kind of relate this to like Montessori or Montessori schools. I don't know how to say it right, but it's kind of like a learner-directed education program where the teacher sets up the classroom in such a way that promotes independent, self-directed learning, and then the children are free to choose any materials they wish to work with. And the way it's designed is that the materials are designed in a way that the children can determine whether they have succeeded using them properly. So there's no reward or reward for success or reprimand for failure. but children are encouraged to persist as long as possible at their chosen task. The third approach is critical inquirer approach, and this uses questions to help participants think critically. It acknowledges that participants have a responsibility to contribute meaningfully to society and evaluate issues around them. And it promotes self-actualization of the learner. Unfortunately, I didn't have an example for this, but as with any class that uses, where the teacher just poses questions and has you answer them. I guess I do. I relate this one sort of to, what's that? The capstone class. I don't know if any of you guys have taken that course yet, but the capstone class was kind of like that, where the teacher posed a question that was sort of controversial and could be taken either way within the bounds of, what our church teaches. And so it was sort of up to us to decide how we felt about the situation and how we would respond in this situation if it was presented to us. So that's what I would use there. The next approach is the collaborator approach, and it's sort of in between the expert and the facilitator in terms of methods. It's not so strict as the expert, but it's not so lax, free as the facilitator approach is. So in this approach, both educators and participants bring specialized knowledge to the learning experience. The educator obviously provides the research-based principles, and then the participants, they contribute their life experiences regarding the principles. So I kind of, back to my family relations, or family and community relations class, I sort of related this to the democratic leadership style of teaching. I feel like this is the most effective way to teach because, in my experience, the teachers that I had who were democratic in their leadership style, they taught the class as a discussion. They never shot down an answer, but they treated all of the answers as a possibility and asked follow-up questions in a way that that allowed the class to come to a certain conclusion. So they were still directing the class, but it was very subtle at the same time. Their classes were usually super engaging because, even if you weren't always entertained by, it wasn't necessarily the funniest teacher or the most comical, but you always wanted to be a part of the conversation because it was so engaging. So that's kind of how I feel about the collaborator approach. Also with this approach, the agenda and curriculum are prepared by the instructor, but they're fitted around the needs of the participants. So it's sort of, it's set, but it's not set in stone. It's flexible. So the participants are encouraged to contribute ideas for the agenda, but the educator does maintain the ultimate, veto power, I guess you'd say, or control over the schedule and the content of the discussion. So the next approach is the interventionist approach, and in this approach, educators are change agents. They seek cognitive, attitudinal, and behavior change, and they believe family life education should go beyond learning for knowing and to learning for living. They want their learners not just to absorb their teachings, but to apply their teachings to their lives. So they were also referred to as behaviorist-oriented educators, and in this specific role, a behaviorist-oriented educator would plan conditions necessary to bring out the desired behavior, and they employ certain methods to bring about the desired behavior, such as behavioral or learning objectives, modeling, behavioral and reinforcement, and systematic instructional design. The last approach is the eclectic approach, which uses elements of all of the approaches depending on the situation. And so this isn't really, you know, its own approach. It's sort of a combination of all the others that have already been talked about. But a teacher that uses the eclectic approach, they would kind of assess the situation, you know, what their students are like. Are they very knowledgeable about the information that you're sharing them with, or that you're giving them, or are they totally new to this information? Are they a very social group, or not so much? Or they might also take into account maybe the specific learning activities that they wanted to do that day. So it wouldn't always be a lecture, or it wouldn't always be a discussion, but they sort of change it up. So anyway, that is all I have to say about that, all of the approaches for teaching our family life education. Thanks for listening.